Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with another video we are going to watch together. Today, we're watching a historical video. This is the resignation speech of Richard Nixon from the presidency. A bit of background. Nixon, I think he was originally a governor of California. Well, he didn't start out as governor, but earlier in his career, he was a California governor. Um, he would try to run. I think he would be vice president to Dwight D. Eisenhower, if I remember right, and then he would try to run against Kennedy unsuccessfully. Of course, this is when we have the first televised debate and the infamous Kennedy Nixon debates, where people get to see the reactions of the men who are in the debate. And yeah, Nixon does not come off looking good. He looks nervous and sweaty, and yeah. He would not run again until um, Lyndon B. Johnson leaves office in 1968. Well, it's the end of 67, and is it the end of 67 or in 68? Anyway, 1968. I think he gets elected at the end of 68. So, but he takes over for LBJ and is president. Now, it's not to say Nixon was all corruption all the time. He did have good points. He founded the Environmental Protection Act, the EPA. He opened negotiations with the communist country of China because it had been the first time we had talked with them since they had become communist. But what catches Nixon is not only the break in at Watergate, but the evidence that leads to him, as well as the White House tapes, which he installed the taping system so that we can hear what the president does, talks about, except in very sensitive matters of, top secret policy. It's something I think definitely we should keep recordings in the White House. But I'll go ahead. Uh, After he was caught with the Watergate scandal and everything, he eventually does resign. This is the speech he gives when he announces his resignation. So let's go ahead and hop into this here. Okay. Yeah. From the Miller Center Public Affairs at the University of Virginia. I think that's, yeah, M Center, Miller Center American President. So yeah.
Good evening. This is the 37th time I have spoken to you from this office, where so many decisions have been made that shape the history of this nation.
37 times. We don't usually hear from presidents much anymore, except during State of the Union addresses. There used to be FDR's fireside chats, and Nixon talks about speaking directly to the nation 37 times. So, okay.
Each time I have done so to discuss with you some matter that I believe affected the national interest. In all the decisions I have made in my public life, I have always tried to do what was best for the nation. Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere.
So, yeah. He talks about wanting to do what's right with the country, but then he brings it up right away. Yes, Watergate. He still tried to stay in office. He does win his second term, but he resigns during his second term. I can't remember exactly what year it was. 68 to 72. We're looking about 74, 75, I guess.
To make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however, it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort.
Now remember, this was at a time when it wasn't just political rancor left and right, my party, your party, and voting across party, voting just within party lines. No, we see many people step across and say what he did was wrong. There should be investigations. Both Republican and Democrat were saying this. And yeah, it's just hard to find that kind of braveness put forward anymore.
As long as there was such a base, I felt strongly that it was necessary to see the constitutional process through to its conclusion. That to do otherwise would be unfaithful to the spirit of that deliberately difficult process and a dangerously destabilizing precedent for the future. But with the disappearance of that base, I now believe that the constitutional purpose has been served, and there is no longer a need for the process to be prolonged. I would have preferred to carry through to the finish, whatever the personal agony it would have involved. And my family unanimously urged me to do so.
So he's talking about, I would have gladly finished out my term. You elected me. I, believed I was doing things for the people. Even my family tells me to go forward and finish the term, but the pressure builds on them too much.
But the interests of the nation must always come before any personal considerations. From the discussions I have had with congressional and other leaders, I have concluded that because of the Watergate matter, I might not have the support of the Congress that I would consider necessary to back the very difficult decisions and carry out the duties of this office in the way the interests of the nation will require. I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body.
So yeah, he's like, I didn't want to give up and leave, but I don't have enough support within Congress to do what I need to do for the nation.
But as president, I must put the interests of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home.
So yeah, he's saying, look, impeachment would take too long. You know, that's not what we need to be focusing on. So to save America the hassle where it needs a full-time president that can focus on doing their job, and where Congress can focus on doing their job. So
therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
And Ford would become president. Only president ever that becomes president not through a general election. Because there are other vice presidents who get who become president, but they usually run for a term of their own. You know, the previous president, Lyndon B. Johnson, took over for Kennedy, but he ran afterwards for a term of his own. Let's see, who else? Franklin D. Roosevelt's vice president. Oh, goodness, what was his name? But he would take over for Roosevelt and then have a term of his own that he wins. I'm trying to remember some of the other presidents who died, vice presidents take their place. Teddy Roosevelt. He comes in for William McKinley. There is one I'm missing. I know I am. In the 1920s. Because you have this once a generation thing that happens. But yeah, Teddy Roosevelt takes over for McKinley. I think Hoover takes over for Coolidge. I may be wrong on that one. I can't remember that one too well. It may be Harding. Anyway, it's around 1920. 1940, your president is Franklin D. Roosevelt. He dies right before the end of World War II. And his vice president, I cannot remember his name. Anyway, then you have Kennedy die, Lyndon Baines Johnson take over. And it would finally end in 1980 when Reagan is elected, because he is shot, but he does not die, and thus his president does not take over. But every generation, every 20 years, that president elected in that year ending with zero would die at some point in his presidency, and his vice president would take over. But my point is, Gerald Ford is the only president to take over as vice president who does not get elected to a term of his own. It's killing me now because I cannot remember FDR's vice president that becomes president. Harry Truman, Harry S. Truman. Because I was trying to remember the newspaper. Dewey beats Truman, but Truman ends up beating Dewey in the election. So, anyway, that long roundabout piece. Yeah. Uh, it's an interesting resignation. You should look into it more. It's always an interesting part of American history. But I'll go ahead and post a copy of this video in the description below the video. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.